Delighted to be joined today by Rachel Gillett, Head of Leadership Development at Bauer Academy. Rachel has got a fantastic role helping leaders from a wide range of organisations really think about how they're operating in their organisations. We've had a great conversation, particularly honing in on Rachel's experience around resilience, neuroscience, and looking after yourself as you move through that really delicate onboarding period. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Rachel, I can't believe we have spent so many times on the other end of a screen with each other, but this is our first opportunity to be in person, and what an opportunity it is. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Tess, for having me. I've worked in project management for many years on the other side of the camera at times, so this is a slightly different experience today.
I'd like to start by going in on the I first, before we talk about what you see in the multiple organisations you're exposed to. From your own experience and with the benefit of hindsight, which is always wonderful afterwards, what have been your biggest learnings, either because something's gone really well and it was a surprise, and equally valuable if something hasn't gone well, what have you learned around that?
My leadership career started quite early. In fact, in hindsight, it started too early.
Yes.
You know, I was in a role that I was pretty good at, and the next natural step was for me to take on a managerial position. I thought that that was just going to be a natural step, and it really opened my eyes quite quickly. I could understand what our team needed to produce and how we could produce it, but I never really thought about zooming back and thinking about how the whole organisation was working, which is why it came as quite a surprise, actually, when our company was bought out at that time. And, you know, sadly, over a period of time, my entire team were disbanded and made redundant. And that felt like a brutal process. And although I survived the first round, I didn't survive the second round of redundancies. And I remember actually, as I left and went on to my next role, somewhat shying away from leadership, to be honest, at that stage. But over time, actually, I started to learn my craft in my next role a little bit more, and thought that perhaps it was time to go back. But my second time round, I embraced the people leadership much more than the task leadership.
You've taken on your current leadership role, looking after leadership development, working with folks across multiple industries and corralling a leadership development agenda. What have you learned about, if you like, the golden nuggets, the things that work and the things that really don't work?
It's often the case when you think about some of those big changes, you think about people moving into another organization and having to inherit, you know, the predecessor in that way. But often actually leaders find it really challenging to move through their own company being promoted. And when people are promoted, people look to them for solutions. So when you said that you were writing this book, looking at the first days in leadership role, I thought it was a spot on idea, really, because so many people do find that time challenging. They've been appointed in this role, so therefore people think they're going to have some answers and some plans. But you can't necessarily come up with those plans straight away. I think there's a danger actually when people commit too soon.
Yes. That links to a conversation I was having earlier, both with the previous guest, but also with a client. And I was talking about the balance of, for a leader new into role, the balance of curiosity and certainty. Yeah. People are yearning for certainty because it gives security, it gives a sense of, right, we know what we're doing, let's crack on with it. So the team are asking for certainty, and at the same time you need to stay curious for a bit longer before you decide on the plan. And how do you keep the team on board with you as you balance those two things? You will know I use the 3H framework, and I know that resonates with you. And that starting place is honouring the history, because that gives you the context. What's your experience of the degree to which that really lives and breathes?
I think people intend to honour the history.
Yes.
But I do think those first 60 to 90 days can be quite chaotic.
Yes.
And people are spread quite thin in that time, but it's an important part of the process.
Yeah.
You know, we often think about one leader and then the transition to another leader, but the people in the organization were also going through that transition at the same
Yes.
time.
Yes.
I remember working with an organization and they had a really tough time going through a change to what looked to senior management like a simple keystroke change in a system. And, they couldn't really understand why there was such a
Yes.
backlash about it. But actually, when you got to the core of the problem, this was a team that had been incredibly successful. They'd hit targets month after month.
Yes.
And this process was threatening that. It was threatening their feeling of success.
Something I know you're really passionate about, and of late you've done a lot of your own development in the neuroscience arena. The signature framework that I'm birthing in the book is the onboarding process. I'm recommending starts by going into the human, and then we move out into the relational. Then we're equipped because we understand all of the relational stakeholders. Then we can think about more of the systemic, the wider, the deeper, the historic, and understanding the context fully before we go to reflection and then strategic. From a neuroscience point of view, and everything that you know to be true around what might be going on in that psyche, what's the wise counsel that you would offer for that individual as they hopefully drop into that reflection space? What's going on for them, and how can they leverage that?
Well, if you think about the context, they are constantly thinking about making decisions.
Yes.
Even though they might not be in a position to make full plans,
Yes.
they're starting to reach conclusions about what they're finding.
Mm.
And that leads to decision fatigue, because if you're trying to come to terms with a whole system, a whole
Yes.
organization, it's really hard to do that in a short period of time.
Yes.
So you can't keep it all in your head as you're going through those processes. Don't rely on your brain to actually remember everything and remember the things that actually matter, which is often not the facts and figures,
Yes.
but the emotions and the feelings that
Yes.
you uncover when you start to speak to
Yes.
people
There's
around
lots of nuances.
Emotional intelligence, of course, has been around for quite some time now.
Yes.
But actually, I think it's most important in those first few days. But whilst leaders are going through this, I mean, that fatigue, the brain takes up a disproportionate amount of energy to the rest of our body. It's not just thinking about decisions, it's forming relationships.
Yes.
And we're wired to look for threat in all of our relationships. So we're trying to seek where we can trust people. There's bound to be periods of stress for that leader as they start to uncover things which may not have been first apparent when they took on the role.
Yeah.
And as they move forward, they need to make some decisions about what this means for them and what this means for the organization.
Yeah. Actually, you reminded me of some of my deep thinking as I was moving through the writing of the book. But equally importantly, what do I want to put alongside the book? What will sit alongside the book is what I'm going to call an interactive playbook workbook. To your point about capturing the information, about is there a space that I can capture my reflections, the stories that people are telling, how they're feeling, and start gathering those anecdotal pieces of information. And then when you zoom back, which is I know something you also think is incredibly important, and we agree on this, is where do you put the space to reflect?
Yes.
And where do you have one space to aggregate what you're hearing, what you're sensing, what you're feeling, and what others are telling you, so that you can create a little bit of mental space, physical space, and maybe have a sparring partner, because some people really like and need that. They need someone to go, well, here's what I've heard. Does that make sense? Is that resonating? Am I picking up the right signals?
But I think also it allows you to think about things that you can't resolve in that first period in post. You should be thinking about some of those feedback loops, some of the areas that you're going to return to later on, because you're not going to be able to tackle everything. You're going to have to create a list of priorities.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean to say that you can't tackle those things in the future. It's important to find somewhere, some technique to capture that.
You help me loop back to the 3H, because what that helps you to do as the new leader, of course, honor and acknowledge everything that you've understood in terms of the history, but also the honest conversations. What are you going to work on? And what have you heard but not yet? And there is something very settling for the organisation, the team in particular, to hear that back. Here's what I have heard. Here's the things I think we ought to move forward on together today. And I've also heard A, B, and C, and it's not the right moment, but I want you to know I've heard it. So that honesty about the current context and how people are feeling, As you say, it's really important to acknowledge and play it back.
We're no longer in a space where we don't have means of communicating on a regular basis.
Yes.
That doesn't have to be a formal setting. It can be people doing a quick voice note. It can be, I've had a great week kind of meeting various departments. Here's where I'm at. Bringing people on that journey, making sure that you're visible as you're starting to reach your decision-making stage.
One of the things that I would love to just dial into is this asking for help piece. And I know from some general research that's available, but also some of the own research that I did earlier this year, is it's one of the derailers, meaning not being willing or feeling too vulnerable to ask for help. What would your wise counsel be?
I knew you were going to ask a question about this. And it strikes me, actually, if it doesn't sound too off the wall, that if you were to think about people who climb mountains, when you first start climbing some mountains, you can probably do that on your own, do a little bit of research and navigate it. But as you start to get to some of the bigger climbs, that might be more difficult for you to do on your own. You're coming at them with more awareness of what you want to achieve, of what your strengths and weaknesses are. But mountain climbers, what do? They find Sherpas. They find people who understand that environment, not to in any way take away from their goal, but to help them achieve it with that added knowledge of the environment, being able to understand all of the conditions. I don't think it's that different in business.
So that analogy, I think, works beautifully, not least because two reasons come up. One is it's high risk.
Yes.
High risk territory physically, but reputationally in the business context. But also, I think the phenomenon of Sherpas, because Sherpas are known for, they've got the expertise, they know the lay of the land, they know the paths through, but they don't take away the spotlight from the climber. And I think that balance is beautiful. What other blind spots have you seen and observed that you think you would like to put a spotlight on for people to think about?
People think that they can't possibly plan, that they have to just see what happens. And I think in some ways that's quite wise, but I think actually you can plan your communication.
You can still have an intentional plan, but maybe not broadcast it as detailed expectations.
The pace of change has never been as fast as it has been now. And if you think kind of back over the years, perhaps looking at what was happening in that external environment and thinking about how to respond, might have been a process that you would go through maybe once a year, twice a year. But leaders are telling me they need to do it so much more regularly than that. So
all of your own career has been in the media owner environment, and yet the services that you offer through the leadership development and the academy offers leadership development to a range of organizations. Is there any distinctions that you would draw out?
When you're thinking about those first 60 days, different industries have different paces.
Yes.
And if you're in a very fast-paced business, you might need to actually slow some of that expectation down. Just hold the mirror up and say, I know we're a fast-paced business, but I want to take my time on this.
And that takes a bit of courage. And for me, that comes back to the start. How do I need to show up? What does this organization need? What is it ready for? Don't assume that what I've done before is what's right here. What would be your top 3 pieces of advice you would give to these folks as they were preparing themselves?
I think the first piece of advice would be to actually think about your own resilience through that process. Often we have a overinflated view of what we can achieve. Allow lots of time for reflection, lots of time to stop and pause. All of the basics that we know kind of our brain thrives on, good nutrition, good sleep, all of that. Create an environment where you can still thrive, that you can still make the healthiest decisions. My second piece of advice would be to find your Sherpas and to heavily invest in those relationships. In bigger businesses, to acknowledge that you're not going to be able to meet everybody. You're not going to be able to give everybody the time that you would have liked to. Finding your Sherpas, really truly listening to what they have to say. Not just those facts and figures, but those emotions and those feelings, and starting to build trust. Number 3 would be to bring people on that journey with you. This is not you and your gig alone. Communicate to them and hear back from them in equal measure.
What's your view on best practice on the duration within which you're holding an onboarding?
Well, the classic first 100 days is a classic, for a reason. It's, roughly your 3-month period there for you
Yes.
to be able to have bedded in. I would say for a lot of businesses, that's probably the time
Okay.
when you can start to get a good feel. But the onboarding doesn't stop in the first 100 days. So you haven't really truly onboarded, I believe, until you've gone through all 4 seasons, a
Yes.
whole calendar year. Yes, the first quarter, you're likely to be able to reach decisions, but keep an open mind that until you've been through that first calendar year, you
Yes.
haven't experienced all of the rhythms of that business
Yeah.
yet.
What is it, the thing that you're going away to think about around onboarding? What has this sparked for you?
I believe that those first 60 days are incredibly busy for leaders, but actually carving out time for them to have a safe space where they can
Yes.
download everything that they're thinking and feeling about that
Mm-hmm.
process, including some of those internal processing
Yes.
about what
Yes.
have I taken on? Was this the right
Yes.
decision for me?
Yeah.
I know you will agree in coaching being an incredible opportunity for
Mm.
people. I think it would be very easy for people to think that's not the right time because they're so
Yes.
busy, but it's also the exact reason why it is so important.
Wholeheartedly agree. Rachel, it's been a delight to have you. Thank you very much for being willing to be on this side of the camera for a change.